In a short stretch of time from the mid-90s to the early 2000s, a relatively small group of people started playing around with this thing called the World Wide Web. They had the audacity to think they just might change the world. This project introduces you to the OG players from those hallowed days and lets them tell you what it was like and how you should have been there. Ritesh, how are you? Good to see you, sir.
You too. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. The day after.
Yeah, I heard the electricity went out yesterday. You were to barbecue the turkey?
Yeah, that was my plan B. Can you imagine me being out there with a big, 10-pound turkey, trying to put it on the barbecue for about 3 hours?
Oh, that's fantastic.
That was going to be plan B, So, but the power came back on, and the usual gluttonous feast was consumed, and then we sat outside on the porch for a while and just slept, snoozed off after that.
Oh, that's awesome. We good. We had a ham. Our ham was moldy, and I took it back, and then they were going to replace it, and they're like, "Sir, this is from a different store." I took the ham back to the wrong store. So that was humiliating, but all's well that ends well.
Excellent.
So we'll bring Chan on in a second. Let me do a little housekeeping here. So we're live every Friday on the show, and you can find all the information about upcoming shows at youshoulda.com. And we've got back episodes there. We've got podcasts now, Ritesh.
Oh my God.
We're all over the internet. It's going to be big. It's going to be big.
One day people might even do some shopping on the internet. I'll guarantee you it's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing is, this is just because we have a show now and we're influencers. Please subscribe. You got to say the subscribe thing. It actually makes a difference. I think we're up to like 50 on YouTube or something like that.
Yeah, we need 100, right?
At 100, we can have our own URL. So we're shooting for that. And then the other thing that I'll say is, if you leave comments, if you're on Facebook or YouTube and you leave comments, we can see them and we may put your comment on air, but say hi. And because why you want to say hi is we're about to bring someone on who really needs no introduction, but it is Mr. Chan Suh.
Hey, there he is.
How's it going, sir? For those of you that don't know, Chan was the co-founder and the CEO of agency.com for many, many years. And my partner, and good to see you, sir. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, you too. It's a great day for us to be having this conversation, I think.
Yeah, no, it's going to be good. And speaking of Thanksgiving, I do want to sort of go off script here a bit and thank both of you, Ritesh and Chan. You've supported me over the years, but in particular with some supporting some health stuff with my family. And you guys were really both amazing. So I figured on this Thanksgiving Day, I just wanted to give a shout out for everything you did there because, I don't know, you're remarkable and it really meant a lot. So I just wanted to say that.
It was all Chan. Had nothing to do with me. I just sent an email.
What it's about 20 some odd years later, I think all that remains is the connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. And I think that's one of the things. And why we're doing these shows is every time, we got together for a reunion or whatever, everyone was like, oh, those times and those people. And, we have stayed remarkably in touch as a group and just really amazing people from that time. So
look at that last reunion. God, how many people showed up?
I know. Yeah.
We were expecting like 40. And
yeah. It was like, what, 150 or something like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think they ran out of illegal booze at that place. Place that you had us in.
Yeah. Well, Ritesh arranged it, so it was a very sketchy place.
Of course.
I was coming in with boxes of booze. Yeah.
All right, good. Well, so last week Ritesh put me on the hot seat and sort of said, "How did this all begin?" So now I guess I'll do it to you, Chan. And part of the idea here is just to really figure out what it was like to be there back then. But you and I met on Echo, and you helped me do some stuff. But you were doing some things with you were at Vibe, and you were kind of on long before I got onto it. So if you would just tell us tell us the journey. What was the how did it start for you, and sort of what led up to the point where you and I met, and then we can sort of figure out how we talk about the stories from there.
And Chan, by the way, it'll be interesting because we've heard Kyle's version without going to hear the proper version this week. So,
all right, I'll correct him when he gets it wrong.
Okay, so there you are. You're minding your own business in New York. You were working at Vibe or something. How did you get there?
No, I was in publishing for a number of years before that. I wanted to be a writer, but I entered publishing at the wrong end, which is the marketing side. And the advertising and marketing and the business side. Nevertheless, I stayed in there for a while. And so I did my sort of journey through Details, Life magazine, and this thing called Vibe came up, and it was partly owned by Quincy Jones and Time Inc. It was a joint venture. And I guess they wanted to make a sort of an ice cream sundae of a management team because it was a urban music magazine, and I was the marketing director. I became the marketing director of it, which sort of made people a little bit, doubtful, I guess, but also startled. And I enjoyed that, actually. And so we had a great time. And while I was there, I had been dabbling with communications and modems and computers, not because necessarily because, as I said, I wanted to be a writer, but I always thought computers is a good way to make a living, and also to it's a good tool, and it turns out that you can connect them to each other. What do you know? So I got a modem. I was fooling around with it, and I heard about this thing called HTML, where you could connect pieces of content from across the world through this sort of magical tunnel, the interwebs. And back then it was fascinating, but really, to be honest, it wasn't that interesting because it was just text. So you could click on little pieces of text. It would take you somewhere else. It was great for academics. It was like this humongous footnote machine.
That's a great analogy. Footnote machine. I love it.
It was fun.
And you're sitting there as a marketing guy. I mean, I remember Details magazine. I used to subscribe to it.
Yeah.
The glossy, full color, full print.
That's right.
Sort of stuff.
But I think what happened was at one point there was this thing called the links browser, and you could have in HTML, you could have text and pictures on the same screen.
Wow.
And to me,
it seems so funny today, doesn't it?
That was the moment when I thought, oh, this is something.
Yeah.
This is something. And I, not necessarily from a marketing point of view, but just from a human point of view, this I could stare at and really consume for a long time. It really is about what goes on the screen now at this point. And how do I do this? So that's when I learned, and I didn't know anything about, computing language, Perl, HTML, any of that stuff. So luckily, very few other people did in the world also. So I could get books like Unix for Dummies, Internet for Dummies, things like that, and learn this stuff. And I learned enough coding to be able to put pictures on a page. Really, alongside text, which was better than you, Kyle, because you couldn't get the picture to show up.
I couldn't. That was the first thing you did. I uploaded my site to that server in California, and then I'm like, Chan, my pictures don't show up. Because you had learned to do that 2 months earlier.
Exactly. So I was like, put that double quote right there. Oh, okay, that makes sense.
But what a revelation, right? For a marketing person sitting in a big, magazine, a powerhouse of a magazine company, probably an amazing job working and hanging out with the likes of Quincy Jones, and you stumble upon this thing and something goes aha in your head, right?
Yeah, it did. It really did. And I really wanted to explore it as a way to express yourself and to engage with others. Back then, I don't know, we didn't have this video stuff.
Yeah.
And it was really almost sort of anonymous in the sense that you didn't know what color, what gender, what speech pattern the other person had, right? No accents allowed, which meant that you could really engage on a human-to-human level without really having to worry about color, about prejudices, about ethnicity, about presumed ways of behaving. And I thought, wow, what a departure from all of my life.
And it was worldwide. You could talk to somebody in Hong Kong and
it was the amazing
thing, right?
Yeah, and you could have that kind of an incredible discovery, whether that person was like, 5 miles away or 500 miles away. Like it was just this incredible conduit to other people, which is what really got me hooked. So I'd stay up for hours, nights and after nights, just looking for connection. I think that's really what got me hooked on this.
Huh. Was the Vibe site the first site that you did? Did you just go straight to that, or were you doing other things first?
No, the Vibe site is the first one. So I had to talk the management into letting me spend I think it was like $200.
Like hosting services or something like that.
Exactly.
Did you have to fill in a PO for $200?
I think back then nobody even took PO.
Yeah.
And they were like, Vibe? Yeah, right. Sure.
Yeah.
No, but so it was very low key at first because there really was nothing big. Nobody would believe there was anything at all. So I got to it by experimenting, by trying things out. And then it was really easy in the sense that content was the one thing that I had available to me at my fingertips, right? Vibe produced content every month.
Yeah.
It was a huge amount of beautiful photography, great writing. And I could use that as sort of my paints to paint the screen with. So I learned a lot doing that. And then I showed it to some of the folks inside of Vibe, and we started to actually publish. And the target market back then for Vibe, which was sort of younger, say 16 to 24, was exact sort of 90% of the population of the internet at that point, which was all university, right?
Yeah.
So it was great. I just couldn't get funding. So then I had to turn to advertisers to give me some funding. For this thing called the internets.
Right.
Interesting. How does that conversation go? You want me to do what?
It was fascinating. It was really fascinating because I did not want to do advertising, like in the sense of banner ads. And I was like, I was determined to not do the old sort of like, here's some stuff that you want to read, and then here's some other stuff just to keep trying to get your attention. Yeah. Right? While you're reading this, try this.
Yeah.
It was the thing that I was, obviously I lost that battle.
I know we fought long and hard to prevent the world of banner ads, and I remember
that Vibe came up. That's when I learned to really code, because there was nobody else who could. For me, coding was always about a means to an end, and I think that was the philosophy we had, like from that day that we shared and that we carry even through to today. Yeah, I dare say back then, in a world of maybe universe of like 100 people who could code HTML, I was pretty good. I was pretty good, but it was never about that.
Yeah.
Never about that. It was about what winds up after it.
Yeah. The self-expression piece. And that was the other thing, is the internet was so devoid of anything sort of interesting culturally that if you put something like Vibe up, or I was talking about Urban Desires, but that was your conversations with advertisers is essentially what started agency.com. I talked about that last week, that after that one WAC meeting, we were sitting around at some table drinking beers, and you said, I keep trying to sell ads to these big companies, and they keep telling me I don't have a website. He said, I think we could do this for them. And that was kind of the beginning.
We were trying to sell sponsorships.
Yeah.
Right. So Timex was one of my very first sponsorships.
Oh, I remember that. That was great.
And it was awesome. It was this incredible idea that we could render Timex, watch faces based on the time zones of different places.
And you placed them on the globe, right? There was like a map.
And then underneath it was a directory of websites available in that country.
That's right.
So back then, that was like a big deal. The only problem was that anytime that somebody from the ad agency, which will go nameless, had an interest in poking around, and they couldn't get to the site, they would call me up. Oh. And they'd say, your website is not working. I go, wait a minute. I go on. It was working fine. It was their problem. Their modem wasn't working. but I was responsible at that point for the entire internet.
You were the internet help desk.
I'm like, okay, can you turn the computer off?
Plug it in, yeah.
That whole trope, you know.
Yeah.
So
wow, I love it. So Timex comes along. You sort of say, hey, now there's something here, and then you meet this reprobate, Kyle Shannon. How did that come about? How did you meet him?
Well, like I said, I think we met online before. We didn't know what we looked like or sounded like, which was probably good because that's why we got to be actually friends.
Yeah, exactly. Because if he had seen how beautiful I was beforehand, he'd have been intimidated.
Right. Kyle would have fallen in love with me like from day one. We could have done any work done, you know. So we started talking about the meaning of life. And this whole thing called the internet. At that point, it was not even a whole thing. It was a curiosity. Yeah. I think we kept wondering, why are we so obsessed with this? Why are we so interested? What is this? What is this thing? Yeah. And I remember distinctly thinking, you know, it could be a really great, fun thing that we do. And if we needed to, we could use it to make some money so that we could live.
Yeah.
Right. It was like one thing. It was really the horse leading the cart. The horse was the content and the experiences we could create, and the cart was like the money that we had to make in order for us to do that.
Yep. Yeah. And we kind of had to. I remember us talking about having to earn the right to be able to do this cool stuff. Right.
That's right.
And you know, me as an ex-actor, as an out of work actor, like I was ready to quit my day job from day one, but you kind of had this career going, so it was a bigger deal for you. So, but I think what that did was it drove you to make sure that this was a business that if you were going to quit your job, that we had to have a good chance of it being able to be worth that risk for you.
Yeah, that's what it was. So I started working I kept working for Vi, but at night I was trying to figure out how to make money from this so that we could keep doing more of what we like doing. And that was really I had never worked at an agency before. I was always on the sort of client side, but I dealt with them. Yeah. And I don't even think we had this idea that this is an agency. We called it agency.com because it was really more about agents. We used to say, we are your agents. Like if you go to, if you've never been to China and you want to do business there, you'd probably want to get an agent there.
Yeah. Right? We talked about it being like a government agency. Like we'd come in, you know, with through the back door. We would help you. Right. We would go out. Right. The original name of the company was The Agency.
Yeah, that's right.
And really? It was The Agency.
It was The Agency. And I have cards somewhere that says The Agency.
Yeah, me too.
And then, I went home whatever night we came up with that idea, and looked up, and the domain was available, and we grabbed it. And then at some point, it didn't take that long, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. We're like, it's not The Agency; it should be called agency.com. So we just
Well, for me, it was because that made it easier for people to remember how to get to. It's like 1-800-mattress, agency.com, the complete URL address. And that was really the reason behind it. Yeah. And so it took me a while, I think, to listen to Kyle's sort of siren song of, come on, quit everything.
Well, we got our first job with Sports Illustrated, and I think it was a $9,000 contract. I'm like, $9,000 as an actor. I'm like, we can retire from that, and you're like, that's not quite enough.
$9,000 is like the travel budget for this one trip.
Yeah, exactly. It's fascinating though, because you Chan were managing these big budgets, so you knew the potentially, and Kyle was sitting there going $3.50. Wow, we're in, right? Yeah. So
You're right. And I think that I had a sense from having worked in media that dollars follow eyeballs. And that you can monetize that. And again, it was really for me a way to make money. And we used to always say like, oh yeah, this could be something like, we could have a middle class life, we could have a house, maybe even like afford to have kids. And that'll be enough because we'll be doing something really exciting, something fun. Yeah. And we used to always have that sort of fairly modest ambition in terms of money, but very sort of, I don't know, unbounded ambition in terms of what could be. I mean, I always thought
that was it. Like that for me was like, I think we knew that this was going to change things. And that we were really lucky to be able to do what we did. And then, yeah, if we could make some money, because I remember us talking about, did we want to grow the company really big? And we went back and forth on that. And at some point we just said, well, like this is the only opportunity to start at the beginning of something. So we just want to take it as far as we can. Right.
Well, we had no idea of a preset goal. And,
right.
and some who went to business school would say that was your first of many mistakes. You should have a specific goal. But we didn't. What we said was it'll get as big as it can get while it can stay true to its original mission and vision. Yeah. And luckily for us, I think that we went through a bunch of sort of rejection, for example. And as an actor, Kyle was very used to it, but I wasn't.
Yeah, exactly.
I still don't handle it well. But yeah.
Right. Well, we'd go to the banks, right, to try to get a loan.
Yeah.
I never went to business school, so I would go and say, like, there's this really cool thing called the internet, and I'll show you. They go, yeah, okay, like, why don't you come back when it's a thing?
Yeah.
And believe it or not, that was the case. And we didn't have access to VCs back then. Well, at least we didn't. So we really literally started the money with $80 in a checking account.
Yep.
Because I was at the bank trying to open up an account. And
I think that was the minimum requirement for deposit.
It was a minimum deposit amount to open a checking account.
Yeah.
I remember Ken Trush, who was our incredible CFO and friend and advisor at that point, early on. I called him and I said, I'm at the bank. I have $80. What should I do? And he said, well, open 2 accounts, put 40 in each, one for operating, one for payroll. And that's it.
That's it. There you go. Look at
that. Well, the other thing that you did, Chan, that has been a really good lesson for me is, so we got that first job with the swimsuit issue. You had contacts at Time Inc. Consumer Marketing, right? So that was going to be our first pitch. And that was, you said, I think we can at least get a conversation. And I remember you talking in those early days about, we can never raise our rates. So we might as well start kind of as high as we can and just, sort of ask for what we think is the moon. And then if they laugh us out of the room, then we'll knock it down.
Let's go down.
Yeah. And that ultimately, because the company ended up growing so fast, like that saved us because our margins were good enough that we could actually grow as we needed to. But I remember that being a really big deal for me, thinking about it like that. Like I felt like we planned for success rather than failure. Right. And then we said, let's set our rates as high as we can and kind of live into those rather than start at the bottom and try to work our way up.
Yeah. And I think we had a really good mix of sort of recognition of our own skill set, but also humility about who we were and what we did. And I think we had that sense that, but for the grace of God, right? Anybody else could learn this. So it's really important for us to be more than the sum of our skill sets.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we used to talk about how we were, we would take complicated internet technologies and bring it down to earth and make it about how things work.
Yep.
Not what things do and how complicated things are. Don't fall in love with your tools.
Don't fall in love with the tools. We would also ask the ridiculous question of why. Why do you want a website? What are you trying to accomplish? And that became strategically huge, right? That became really important. And we won a lot of business by turning business away because people weren't ready for a website. They didn't know what they wanted or what they needed.
Yeah. And there weren't many of us, right? Remember? There were just two of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was moonlighting. So we didn't have that many opportunities to do work.
Yep.
And so we had to pick and choose.
So when did you make the move, right? So you've got to that point. You've got now $80 in your checking account. You got $40 for operating expenses. The first client was, I believe, Sports Illustrated, right? Swimsuit edition thing. Is that when you sort of saw, whoa, this could be big? Is that how this happened, Chan? Or when did you in your mind say, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to do this now.
I think that the moment came when I realized that I would rather stay up all night doing this work and gladly go to work doing my marketing work the next day. I was like, and I was on a 24-hour cycle, and
Wow.
I did not feel tired.
Mm.
I think that's when I realized, oh, this is really something. And then Cal kept saying, like, every week, come on, man, come
Quit.
on.
Quit. I was totally impatient.
What's he here? He was
Yeah.
like,
And I kept going, like, let's go pitch. He said, I think we can do something with time and consumer marketing, because I don't know, like they had said something like they might be interested or something, and so I said, well, let's try to get some offices, and let's and so we put together this
after I quit, after
Right.
Yeah.
after I left, we were able to do that. But I think, like, I had these connections at Time Inc. And so we were able to barter with them. There were a couple of things that were crucial. If you don't have capital, you can't buy stuff.
That's right.
You can't get an office. You don't have, nobody will take you seriously, right?
Right.
You can't hire people. So even if you have a job, you can't literally do that job because you actually don't have the equipment to do it or the people. Mm-hmm. So we said, could you please pay us first? And then we'll do the work. And they agreed. And we put in a lot of hours. But those were heady days. And we bartered offices for our work at Time Inc.
Wow.
1271 Avenue of the Americas. And that was a big deal, because for a new company to have an address at the Time Inc. building
in 6th Avenue at that time? Oh my God.
It was like,
wow.
You'd
walk in, and the lobby was 3 stories tall.
Exactly.
Amazing,
right. And people
now to be clear, we were in the old travel offices, like in the dark, dank, like on the 4th floor, which was right near where the trucks used to pull up to pick up magazines. So their exhaust from the trucks would come in the air vent right next to our offices. So
luckily we didn't have windows. So.
We didn't have windows, but every day around 4:00, it would smell like diesel fumes in the office. You have to clear out and take a walk. So it was a forced standing desk.
It was.
Here's an interesting story for you guys. In 1983, I used to deliver airline tickets to that office in that building.
Did you really?
Yeah, because our office was at 1270 Avenue of the Americas. And I was the messenger boy. Yeah. So I remember that office very well.
It was a full circle moment for me, because I used to have an office in that building.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I used to
So now you got this office, you're getting going, starting to hire people and whatever. And, it's one thing that you said, Chan, that's really interesting to me, which was both of you it was passion. It was, wow, it's amazing. Let's make this. You were curious every day by the sound of things, and what can we do? How can we do it? And that culture permeated throughout the company as it grew. I mean, as we said last week, Carl, the most amazing thing was the people that we hired always had that curiosity, were encouraged to be curious, go experiment, go do things. And it was a passion thing for anybody who joined. So from the early days, it sounds like you built the right foundation of that culture of curiosity. Would you agree with that, do you think?
I think that there are many companies, who started a different way and became very successful. I think that our flavor could only be that way because that's who we were. Could not, we used to say, like, we won't hold it against you if you have an MBA. Which was our way of saying,
we'll make fun of you.
Yeah.
Which was our way of saying, I think, in a sort of a maybe passive aggressive way, but like our way of saying we really love what we do.
Yeah.
And we're fine with that.
Yeah. Well, and I think also it was nobody was the expert. I mean, as you get into sort of 97, 98, 99, where the internet's now starting to be a little noisy and everyone's talking about it, then all of a sudden people were claiming to be experts and things like that. But we were there early enough where nobody really knew, what to do. And so those early employees had to be curious and inventive and things like that. And so I think that just
a whole group of you, right, Kyle? I mean, from what you're saying, what Chan is saying, there was a small band of brothers, if you wish, who
Yeah.
were sort of working on all this stuff, right? It
Well,
wasn't
yeah,
the
and
talent
people
pool
came.
wasn't there, right?
I think people came from all over because we
Mm.
offered an alternative place
Mm.
where, I mean, look at that collection, right? Carl used
Yeah.
to be an actor. I was like marketing director of a urban music magazine. And remember, Ruth, my wife now, but she came from a proper agency, and
Right.
and we couldn't hire her for a few years because we couldn't afford it.
It's
Wow.
true.
You know? She would
You're
call me
good,
like,
but come back in a couple of years. Yeah.
yeah, I know. I'm like, gosh, I can't. I
Yeah.
don't have the money, you know. And that was a lot. There was a lot of stuff behind the scenes. Like we didn't have capital to begin with, which
Yeah.
we didn't know any better. So
Mhm.
had I known, I don't think I would have started this company. But because I didn't,
Yeah.
you know. But I did have I had a co-op in the West Village,
Mhm.
and I had a choice to make. Do I make payroll or do I pay the mortgage? And so I lost that co-op. It was like, a big loss, but this other thing was more important.
Yeah.
And I think for those of us who built things, going through that crucible,
Yeah.
we feel different
Yeah.
about what it means to spend a dollar, what it means to hire someone and to hold that bond sacred, what it means, to demand that they do their best and you do your best,
Mhm.
like those things I think had higher thing. They weren't as academic,
Yeah. Yeah. It was a service business. So it was like our ability to hire was based on our ability to sell in and do the work and deliver the work. Right. And our ability to deliver meant, that would get us the next job or word of mouth, things like that. That was super important. So Chan, talk about, let's shift gears a little bit here to, that like, I'm just thinking like, all of what we've been talking about right now has been 1271, Avenue of the Americas and the Time Life building. Those first 9 months were remarkable. We went from 2 people to I think 46 people in space. We had space for 20. We grew really quick. We landed MetLife and American Express Student and GTE and all of those sort of things. Talk about, something like, what was it from that time for you that felt like, wow, this is a really big deal, or that was really innovative and interesting in terms of something we delivered? Like, just talk about that phase of like, what was a big deal for you back then?
Yeah, I think that there was a couple of things. On the commercial side, I'd say the fact that we had all these blue chip clients. They weren't just sort of startups who were cool, but these were actual sort of pillars of American economy or global economy, who entrusted us with this sort of huge channel, right?
Yeah.
It was humbling,
Yeah.
and it was also heady. And then I think at some point we said, "Oh my God, let's not screw this up, right?
Right.
Let's do this."
Well, I think we had that joke about this just might work, and the corporate motto of "figure out what sucks, don't do that." I think that was our way of sort of, acknowledging, like we weren't all that, but we were lucky enough to be in those conversations to be able to do all that.
Right, and we used to have, remember these little propellers?
Oh yeah.
That you'd fly, you'd spin them in between your hands.
Oh,
and
yeah, and they fly up. Yeah, I remember those things.
And it used to say propeller heads with taste. And that's how we thought of ourselves. We were geeky, but we knew a good thing when we saw it.
Exactly.
Right?
So, as Kyle said, Chan, so the two of you, you've got a couple of people. How are people finding you? Were you going out and talking to people, or were people saying, "Hey, we should call you"? We've heard about you guys. What was that?
New business wise?
First few clients.
You mean new business wise?
Yeah, like MetLife or Amex.
It was really all word of mouth. I remember when we first got MetLife to call us. It was really a fluke. They were talking to Modem Media because Modem Media was like the big place to establish
in Connecticut. Yeah, I remember that.
Interactive advertising. Remember? And they were really one of the sort of granddaddies of this thing. And we used to do work for them. So we built like the Zima site for them. We were the freelancers, Kyle and I. So and when they were talking to, I remember they were very excited, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we're talking to. We can't tell you who it is, but it's like a company, and their logo is like Snoopy." I'm like, "Of course we know what that is." So they were sort of bragging about it, and then I think they got to a contracting, and they were, I think, balking at the price tag. And I think as a joke, one of them said to MetLife, and of course, I mean, if you really want to go cheap, you could go to these two guys and who do this out of their living room. Like you're MetLife, you wouldn't want to do that. And they said, who might those be?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they gave us a call. And I think what we said was, we don't know. I think we were very honest. They said, well, Motor Media wanted X amount. And we said, you know what? We don't know. We said, we don't know. And if anybody tells you that they know, they're lying or they're delusional. We don't know what it will take. So all we can do is tell you that we know how to do this.
Yeah.
And if you let us do it with you, not for you, right, then I think we'll all be much better off at the end. I remember saying that distinctly to Betsy Morgan. And so then they were like, oh, okay, this is like consulting. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
They understood that clearly. And they said, okay, so I remember going over there with a desktop computer and a big CRT monitor.
That was the luggable, as you used to call it. The luggable. Yeah.
Let's show you the internet. Let's pretend that the internet is in this box. Okay, and we'd show them at the board meeting. Remember, Kyle?
Yeah, they brought in their board, and it was one of those big boards. You had on your patented holy sweater, which was a sweater that I guess you had from junior high school, with literally a hole in the sweater, in the elbow. And I was wearing whatever I was wearing, and then we're in with all these suits at MetLife and talking
you
about.
walked into the boardroom at MetLife with a computer, plugged it in, and presented to the board.
Yeah, we said, here, there's this thing called the internet. And go like, it's really cool. Afterwards, they'd say this for years. They were like, you went to the board meeting and you told them it was cool.
But it was coming from a real place. It was coming from a very authentic place.
Yeah,
we're like,
this
is cool. Like,
absolutely.
you can't believe what happens when you put stuff here. It could be seen there, and their minds were blown, right? Like but we were. Super passionate about it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. Like, we weren't commercial.
Yeah.
Whether you give us this job or you hire us, whatever, this thing is still cool.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I think started happening, and this was sort of learning the power of, kind of once you got into the Fortune 500 club, like 2 or 3 jobs after those first 1 or 2 were, hey, I was at a party and I talked to all of those marketing people talked to one another.
Yes.
And so we ended up getting jobs just because they knew, well, if American Express hired you guys, then it must be safe, right? So I don't know, 4 or 5, companies in a row were all Fortune 500 companies, Hitachi,
and the fact that we had a timing physical address,
that didn't hurt.
made them feel better, right? And like it all sort of added up. So literally, Monica Freed said, "Oh, I was talking to somebody who's at MetLife. They said you could do this for me," and she was responsible for marketing to students for American Express. So it was a perfect combo, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Internet, American Express, and we did that. We did that website.
Yeah, the students.
I remember 2 things about it. One, they had this awkward, domain. It was aexp-trs.com, and it was because it was American Express.
Travel-related
services, exactly.
Right, I remember that.
We'd say, is there any way that you could maybe humanize this a little more, or maybe like make it easier? And they'd say, no, our technical people said, this is the limit. These are the character limits, and you have to do this. So one day, back then you could call up Internic and register domains.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wow. And so I called them up, and I'm like, hey, man, look, can you look up something for me? Is AmericanExpress.com registered? And the guy goes, no. I said, yeah, could you just hold that for me? So I registered it.
I'm ordering a drink. Can you hold the drink for me? I'll be right there.
So I register it thinking I'm gonna like a dog with a dead bird, right? I'm gonna bring it to them and go like, hey, look what we did for you. So maybe 24 hours later, somebody comes to me and says, there's a lawyer from American Express and he is pissed. I'm like, what happened? So I got on the phone, and for the next 15 minutes, I couldn't get a word in edgewise. A lawyer from Amex screamed at me for 15 minutes and threatened all kind of bodily harm because I had, I don't know, I guess I had like misappropriated their domain.
Trademark, yeah.
No problem.
Yeah, it's all yours. You can have it.
Exactly. So that was good. That was just great. And the other piece was they couldn't let us like log into their system to build them a website, and they would not let us build them a website at a hosting place outside of their system. So they were in Tucson, Arizona, I think, and they're in a bunker
in Phoenix.
Protected.
They were in Phoenix.
Yeah.
Phoenix.
So the solution we came up with was they shipped us by FedEx an AS400.
Oh, that's right.
Onto which we put their website,
amazing
internet functionality, and shipped it back to them so that they could plug it in. That was so cool.
Yeah. The other
if they received it, they plugged it in, and somebody said, "Now what do we do?"
Yeah. The other thing we did there that I remember is, we're like, hey, this is young. You're targeting students here. You've got this, this old, guy in shining armor, right? Their logo. They're like, we put sunglasses on him, and they're like, well, we're pretty sure we can't do that. And we're like, well, we should try. So we mocked it up, and they ended up. I don't know who approved it, if it was Monica or who, but somebody approved it over there. So we actually added sunglasses to the American Express dude.
Yeah, they were like Ray-Ban looking black sunglasses.
Yeah,
it lasted like a year, and then somebody looked at it. I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody in brand and said, "Are you crazy?"
But but it is fascinating because I remember when I joined. Now it's the height of the boom, startups everywhere, and I remember having a conversation in one of the management meetings. It was you, Kyle, Aaron, I think Kevin Rowe had joined as well, and we were talking about whether we should go after and service some of these startups because the Razorfish was doing, all sorts of funny deals. We'll work with you and trade equity, and they were making millions and all that sort of thing, right? And you were adamant, Ken. You're like, no, we're sticking to what we do really well, and we're not going to go that route. And I think that was a bit of a savior, in 2001. It actually saved us while others started going under.
Yeah, I never, being a startup, I never really trusted other startups.
you knew, right?
Well, you did. You always said, big companies will pay. They may pay late, but they'll always
pay. Exactly. I remember that.
Yeah. Other companies will just go out of business.
Yeah. So now you're grown. You've got you're growing the business. Things are exciting. When did Omnicom come into all this?
What was it, like 97, 98, Kyle?
Yeah, I think it was 97. And I'll set it up, and then you sort of take it from there, because I almost killed the deal before it started. So we were working like ridiculous hours, right? And no, it was 96. It wasn't that late. It was earlier. We were working ridiculous hours, 14-hour days, 7 days a week. So one night, it was like a Friday night, it was 7 or 8 at night, the phone rings, and like people were starting to talk about the internet. So you'd get these sort of posers that would be like, oh, the internet, it's going to be big. You should get a website. There was just all this sort of snake oil salesman stuff.
Yeah.
So this woman calls me one night, and I pick up, and she's like, hey, I represent someone really important. They're going to be big. She was like using all this language, like just this bullshit language. And I was just cranky enough where I was like, I think this is bullshit, but it kind of sounds real. So I go, hang on a sec, let me put you on hold. So I put her on hold, and I walked over to Chan's office, and I said, what did I say? I said, Chan, can you take this call? I think this is a waste of time. I think this is, but it might be real. So can you just take the call? And so I'll let you take it from there, Chan.
Well, I spoke to, and I kind of recognize corporate speak as opposed to snake speak.
Yeah.
So
the distinction.
There's a big distinction. There really is. There's a vocabulary distinction. And so I heard her out, and all she wanted was to be allowed to visit, just to check us out. Right. And I think that they were formulating an investment strategy in this field, which was very smart of them.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, little did they know they were going to walk into a windowless set of rooms.
With what was TapeNet? It was called, right? Yeah.
Tape to the walls. Yep.
There was no Wi-Fi, and we weren't allowed to, because we were there semi-illegally, we weren't allowed to use the wires embedded in the walls.
Right.
So we ran Ethernet wire all over that place. It was like
with duct tape,
literal
duct tape,
spider web of things. I remember the fire marshal for that floor walked in one day and just turned right around and left.
No way, really?
I have not seen anything.
He said, "I was not here."
Yeah. So anyway, so we brought him in, and I met Tom Watson, who was the vice chairman of DOS, I think, or Profit at that point, came with Felice, who had been hired. I think Felice had been hired to sort of suss out these companies, and so
John Wren was there as well.
The first visit was not without John. It was really Tom, and he loved it. He loved, I think, the sort of the spirit that was there.
Probably the energy, right? The energy in the room must
we
have
were
been
climbing all over each other. Like Ruth, who's my wife, as you guys know, was there during those days. At the end of those days when we moved out of Time Inc., but she still remembers climbing over people to answer the one phone in the conference room, because there were probably 18 people working in the one conference room.
Yeah.
And so so he came, he liked it, and we got to talking to Omnicom, who wanted to make an investment. And I think at one point it made a lot of sense to us. And we decided to do it. But it was, I think, a really fortuitous coincidence, I think, that we got to answer that phone call.
Yeah.
And also, I thought John Wren was a total like mensch.
Yeah. There was one of the moments I remember in that first meeting when John Wren was there. It was, we were in your office, which I think you smoked in your office at the time, so you had an ashtray, and it was John Wren.
65 Broadway too. I remember when I met him. 2 ashtrays in the office.
so if anything, we were sort of honest to a fault. And at one point, like, we're having the niceties kind of conversation. I forget if Chan said it or I said it, but we basically said, "Hey, I know you're interested in talking to us, but we've kind of won like $500,000 in business from your agencies, and like, we just want to put it on the table that's happened." And John Wren's response was brilliant. It was just stone cold, not a reaction on his face. He goes, "Oh, we're very well aware of that."
Why do you think we're here?
Exactly.
Who are these guys who are meeting us every day?
I also remember I think these were the times when when you know that you have built something that other people want, and you're not really sort of I don't know, you're not really holding on to it for dear life just because you want to control it, and you're not being a jerk about it. I think it puts you in a very powerful position to bargain or to not bargain. I always said you gotta be always like so ready to walk away.
Yeah, you gotta be ready. Right? Yeah, exactly, ready to walk away.
And we used to say that. We'd say, like, I remember we called up Omnicom one time and said, "Hey, it's been like a month and a half of negotiations and talking. We're really, really busy. So you need to like either do a deal or not do a deal. Because we got work to do. We got like work to do, and you're not paying us to talk to you all this time."
Yep. And the other thing that happened with that one, Omnicom had never made a minority investment. They'd always done.
It was acquire, model, right?
And what we talked about, and it was funny, we talked to Craig and Jeff from Razorfish about this, and like, because everybody kind of knew everyone, but we're like, we barely know how to run our business. How is someone like that doesn't know what we do going to run our business? So what we said was, we're willing to do this, but only if it's a minority investment, because we're still figuring out what this thing even is, much less, turning over the reins to someone else.
But I think Omnicom was smart. They knew that. They knew that. They were very smart about it. They put, a bunch of money into several different companies.
Yep.
I think it was right. It was us. It was Organic. It was Razorfish. Right, Jonathan Nelson. I think Organic was funded by Omnicom.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, they bought minority interest in a number of companies.
Yeah.
And all at once. So it was a bit of a spectacular deal, but it was a bit also of a stamp of approval, I guess.
Yeah.
We were kind of in the club at that point.
But the most important thing for us at that point was, first of all, I was doing coding, and I was doing finance. Bad idea. I was doing the negotiations. That I could do pretty well.
Yeah, you were pretty good at that.
For me, it was just the idea that we could tap into some of this expertise.
Right.
That was
and the scalability, right? They allowed us to really scale.
Yeah, because they lent us on a handshake, like a lot of money.
Yeah.
As in like way into double digit millions of dollars. They lent it to us. I always remember, John and I would do a handshake, and would drive the finance people and the lawyers crazy. Right?
Well, you would sometimes kick the lawyers out of the room, right? It was just, you and I need to talk.
They're in the way, yeah.
but he is. But at that point, like, he was an honorable man, and we repaid him in kind.
Yeah.
So I think he knew that he could trust us, and we did too. Not for nothing, when somebody lends you tens of millions of dollars, it's
it was remarkable. Like that was sort of the key to that was what helped sort of turn it into the rocket ship it became. So listen, Chan, I think we're going to have you back, because I think there's
so much more here.
Business,
so much more here. Yeah.
We should dig into. So
sure.
So at some point we'll figure out when to do that. But what I would like to do is, in the last sort of 5 minutes we have or so here, talk about from when from those early days of agency, like what we learned in there, and sort of how it shaped you. Like, talk about the journey since then. Like what did you take from those days? What how has it colored how you've sort of carried things forward, and what's been the sort of from that time forward? What's that experience been for you?
Well, I think it was a singular experience of a lifetime, I would say. And I stayed with it for a long time, and through its ups and downs. And
I left in 2002. You were there much longer, right?
Yeah, I was there for another 5-6 years. I sort of semi-left and came back and so on. So I saw the entire life cycle of a company, and I learned so much in terms of pattern recognition.
Yeah.
So I can see when things are going to go well, and I can see when things are at risk.
Oh,
much
interesting.
better. I can see the behavior patterns, right? Some people, I don't know, maybe they can read like balance sheets or something, but I could see from like the management or the sort of sixth sense you have when you're talking to teams of people, when something is just on the cusp of going up or down. So that was great.
Can you see that on both your internal teams, but also on the client side? Like, is it
Absolutely.
one more than the other, or is it both?
No, it's wherever human beings congregate. I think I learned from some very incredibly wonderful experiences and some stinging failures. Some of like my worst nightmares in business, right, have come from agency.com. So I think I learned so much on both extremes that I'm not afraid.
Do you have one of those you're willing to share? Like what's one of those that is just that business nightmare that you're like, I wish I hadn't gone through it, but I'm really glad I did. One of those. Any you're willing to talk about?
I think it was really around this idea of like CEO and leadership, which was, I'd say, I think I held on a little, like I wasn't very good at holding on in an elegant fashion. So I was a bit ham-fisted about sort of holding on to control. And that I still think about those times when other people had to suffer from my sort of wanting to be king of all things. Right? Because at some point, when you build something up and things are not going well, you go, well, surely I can fix this.
Right, because I built it.
Of course, because
I made it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You don't know when to let go, and letting go sometimes is the best way to control something.
Yeah.
Because then other people can really sort of come in and help. And I always thought that's a great lesson. You know, other lessons about the balancing between shareholder value, right, and employee experience. You know, our generation comes from sort of Milton Friedman and you know, the purpose of a company is to make more profit so that the company can do well and the people can do well. And sometimes I think I think over corrected in that sense. And didn't understand the people. And so there's tons and tons of lessons. And I also know that like it's not impossible to create something huge from really nothing, Kyle. You know, like at one point, I remember one of my clients at GTE sending me a stock quote. You know, I think it was the second day of our IPO, and it said it was like $1.001 billion.
Yeah,
it's a valuation, right?
Right.
And like, holy cow! Seriously, really? When you and I used to be like, we used to have to borrow, I think it was your mother's or your stepmother's car to go up to Modem Media to go pitch $500
I remember I found out years later we had won some business and we went out to Tad's Steakhouse, which if you don't know Tad's Steakhouse, think of the worst cut of meat you can and put it on a hot grill. That's Tad's Steakhouse.
Kind of like your turkey, Ritesh.
Yeah, great. But I learned years later that you actually like drained your savings account for us to be able to like, you know, celebrate and things like that because you were like, this is important. And yeah, it was we were scraping the bottom for a while. And then
it was like $7.99 steaks.
Exactly.
You had $40 in your operating budget.
Yeah, we had spent that on, I don't know, carpet cleaner or something for the dirty office.
Right. We saved our money for the next level of modems, and the new like 1 gigabyte drive.
Yeah,
Right.
Remember those days? Yeah.
That was
So guys, you know, Chan, this has been, as Carl said, it's been amazing, and I think we got to have you back and go through a couple of the other sort of iterations, I think, because, you know, there are moments, I think, you know, going into 1271, then from there to 665. And we, you know, Kyle and I relived a little bit of it last week when we talked about the pit. You know, you go down there, it was all dark, and, you know, the creatives were just
right. We used to say, like,
to go to 20 Exchange Place and the build out and the privacy pods and all. I mean, those 3 seminal moments, I think, of that growth and step that there's going to be some really great stories about moving from 1271 to 665.
Yeah, we went through so much, didn't we? Like, and it's all fascinating. It's all I think, really humbling to think back. The thing that I really love most, I think, is what we talked about at first, the fact that all of us are so sort of ready to and enjoy getting back together.
Yeah.
There was pain. Definitely there was pain.
Yeah.
It's okay. You know, it's okay.
Yeah,
It
but
was shared. It was a shared pain.
It was pain in service of that bigger idea. Like that sort of feeling lucky to be a part of it, I think, was always there. So it was always in service of that. So we really did have those common goals.
But it's consistent. If you talk to anybody, and we have, Kyle, over the last, 4 weeks, and the posts on Facebook were just incredible, the memories people were coming up with. But to a T, to a person, everybody says that moment in time was the best moment of their work careers that they've had. That camaraderie, that figuring things out, the culture of curiosity and innovation. They've been trying to replicate that in the lives after agency.com. And I know I do. I still try to do that today, with the teams that I work with. Got a bunch of youngsters working for me at Ogilvy Consulting. And I keep telling them, go be curious, go learn, go figure things out, because
Be
that's
weird.
you've got to do that, right?
Yeah.
So thanks to the two of you for doing so much for so many people from those two humble beginnings of, can I put an image on a website, right?
That was where it started. Well, anyway, we will definitely have you back. I'll tease one little thing. We've got Eamon and Andy on in a couple of weeks, so we'll talk about when we brought Online Magic together with us. But the first show of January, we're going to have Craig Kanarick and Jeff Dotches from Razorfish. So the
and don't
having them on in January.
And don't forget, we got Julia Groves from British Airways.
That's right. We got Julia Groves, where she was.
So you know what?
And then she came and worked for us. So we'll be digging deep. So we will be back, Chan. But yeah,
Kyle, I think on the Julia one, we should have Chan join us. We should have a four.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Don't tell her.
No.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah, we'll have
Ruth and Julia were great friends, I think.
Yeah, that's terrific.
Super.
Anyway, Chan, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. It's great to see you as always, and really appreciate you coming on and bearing your soul.
That was great, man.
It was awesome. We have to do it again.
Yeah, we tend to have these conversations. Now it's public.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah.
Oh, here.
Guys, thank you so much.
We'll talk to you soon.
See you.
All right, see you guys.
Take care.